Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I want to start off first with some data that was released early this morning here on Monday, and it shows the July statewide average temperature ranks. So there's a number in every state, and the closer you get to 127 would be the record warmest, and 1 would be the record coolest. And so some of the new data support what we expected, which was the states lining the West Coast did just finish their hottest July on record. Meanwhile, the Southern Plains, much of the Midwest and the Ohio River Valley into the Southeast, has really resisted seeing a lot of extreme heat. Now, with the same map, we're going to flip this over and show you statewide precipitation ranks, and there's quite a few things that really jump out at me here. Let's start west to east. Very strong southwestern monsoon here, so the flow comes around like this. We've seen just a lot of thunderstorm activity, especially in parts of Arizona. And when you look at it, you see, well, wow, California had a very wet July. Remember, to be wet in July in California requires very little precipitation, and a lot of this was tucked away in the monsoon, not in the Central Valley, not in the northern part of California where we've seen those extensive wildfires. So we're still dealing with the major problems in our reservoirs, especially in the northern part of the state. Then as you get farther to the north, it got much drier. What kept Idaho wet was, again, southwestern monsoons sending more of that moisture farther to the north. We've been wet throughout almost the entirety of the Cotton Belt. There are very few regions through here that have been dry, but it did get dry throughout July in parts of the Central Plains, but that's nothing compared to the northern plains, or from Montana through North Dakota and over to Minnesota. Minnesota, our driest state compared to normal, again, compared to normal in the month of July. Northeast, very wet, but we did see drought develop right here in the Appalachian Mountains. So these are just good maps to kind of keep an idea about where the pattern's been, because at the end of this video I'm going to talk about where I think it's going, and I have to say that there are pretty weak signals, which means I'm probably going to rely more on persistence than anything else. So let's take a look now at our soil moisture change. I always want to rewind the clock 2 weeks, so we're going to go back to the 26th of July. You're looking at the top 40 centimeters or 16 inches as soil moisture. And we did have, of course, quite a bit of rain that moved through parts of the drier sections of the United States recently, like right here in the northern plains, central plains, and upper Midwest. And so let's see how much that changed, that deeper soil moisture. So this again was on the 26th of the July. This is on the 9th. Now the biggest changes, as you can see here, we did improve soil moisture in a narrow corridor in through here, deep, okay? But then a big improvement almost to the point of flooding, actually not almost to the point of flooding in parts of central Wisconsin. Storms did move last night and early this morning through the drier parts here of eastern Iowa and right here on the border of Illinois and Wisconsin. We're watching some heavier rains move through early this morning, came through this part of the Ohio River Valley. Where is it going? How much is it going to change? Those are some of the big questions we've got to tackle, because we're now getting to this point in August where, as we move ourselves closer toward fall, we expect a seasonal change in the pattern. So what does summer have left to show us? Well, let's get right to some most recent satellite data. And this morning, just as the sun rose, we can see kind of two of the big features we're going to keep a close eye on. All right. The first is the wave that's moving through parts of Wisconsin, and this low is going to be moving in this direction. And we do have chances again later today of seeing strong to severe storms in this area. The second is the low that's here, and it is going to be giving us a chance for some severe storms in parts of the upper Midwest, right, centered on the Red River Valley of the north. But as I take you back, let me just go back through the evening. Here we are. And we're going to go back into tomorrow just as the sun was setting. And you can see the shift in the pattern as that upper level trough came through here, bringing in the cooler weather, shifting the wind direction, but really, just pushing that smoke off in this direction. And smoke just covered much of the plains, the high plains in the Intermountain West yesterday as the sun was beginning to set. From there, let's go take a quick look at where this smoke is going as we play this out through the 10th and the 11th. We'll let it start over again here. So you can see that trough moving toward the Canadian prairie, spreading the smoke to the south of it. But we will be rebuilding a ridge on the western side of the United States, so I expect that smoke to really rebound in that direction again very, very soon. Now, one of the more important things, I think, for a lot of, especially those folks that watch my content in the Corn Belt, let's now see the last 16 hours or so of accumulated precipitation. So that's what this animation is showing, and we can see the heavier rain this morning moving through southern Indiana, getting right here on the Ohio River. But last night, as we watched the storms come through eastern Iowa and southern Wisconsin, Did this bring in the kind of relief that we needed in this area? Because this is a pocket that had been very, very dry. Now, that's not the only place. Of course, you saw the stats for Minnesota, the Dakotas. We know that we're drier in parts of the plains, but I was focused in on this particular area to see if we could get some rain that would revive that situation. And what I've got right now through the last 72 hours is shown here. So the heaviest rains right in through this corridor, this again is at the end of last week, spreading through Wisconsin. Last night, the rain came through parts of northeastern Iowa and is moving over towards Chicago. In fact, it was storming while I was recording this right now in Chicago. The southern Illinois rain is moving in this direction. So we're just trying to keep tabs on where this Corn Belt precipitation is. And I'm going to tell you something. This was not well forecast a full week ago, like last Monday. We didn't anticipate the rain getting this far to the south. That didn't evolve until midweek. But outside of that, over the weekend, we saw torrential rains at the end of last week here in parts of Nebraska near Omaha, coming out of Lincoln to Omaha. And the question is, are we going to expect more of that? Now, real quick, around the rest of the country, this is an area that I'll be watching very carefully. You saw over the weekend, we brought in some heavier rainfall into that quarter, especially parts of Virginia, North and South Carolina, getting up toward New Jersey. Now, in this region, what we're watching is a tropical system that we got to pay very close attention to. We're going to get to a discussion of that in just a moment. First, our severe weather threat today. Storms to reignite here later on this afternoon, but scattered storms in a larger area here. And then with that other wave that was coming out of Montana, heading in this direction, the tail end of that front was going to be pulled through parts of the Red River Valley of the north, potentially producing severe storms there tonight. Now, it's this system that eventually goes way up here to the Hudson Bay, and as it does so, tomorrow, this is on the 10th, we have a broad area over which we have to be very aware of what's going on in terms of severe weather threat. And the models have really identified the primary threat to be from straight line winds, but what is just incredible to think about is this is coming on the anniversary of the derecho event that went through Iowa. So let's go take a look at that right now, and we're going to go to the high-res NAM model here. So through early morning, let's get up to about noon, right when I was recording this, or I was recording about 11:30. We can see that throughout this afternoon, the scattered storms coming through northern Illinois into parts of eastern Wisconsin and Michigan. And now, outside of that area, okay, we are going to see a lot of scattered storms over the southeast in through the Ohio River Valley as well. In fact, some rain coming into some drier pockets here in Tennessee and Kentucky. The other low, though, that we're going to keep an eye on is moving out of Montana here into southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And then you'll see tonight, right in through here, this is about 11 o'clock, we're going to watch this very carefully in the evening to overnight hours for the strong storms. Now, if I can step you back, what's interesting is that the models are attempting to take the outflow of this evening's storms in northern Illinois and pass it farther to the south, possibly bringing more rain right into this area. But the models don't handle this very well. Okay, so you see that that's kind of swiping out there, heading straight toward like St. Louis to Kirksville, this area and through here. That'll be yet, we're going to have to nowcast that, is what I'm trying to tell you, to see if that does evolve, if the outflow does do that. Now, as we go into the day on Tuesday, this is through early Tuesday morning, so that possibly moves down here pretty far to the south, almost like I-64. But then as we go through the day on Tuesday, this is Tuesday midday, what will be most critical to watch is to see if storms do reignite right in this area, middle of the afternoon in southern Wisconsin. Because if they do, we're going to watch the outflow of those storms push that boundary farther to the south, and we could get a squall line that moves in through this area. Could be stormy in parts of the other of the Ohio River Valley as well. We're going to get storms in the interior of the Northeast, and here is the tail end of that front. Not heavy precip, scattered light precip in the overnight hours getting into Wednesday morning. So let's just watch this area very carefully as we go into Tuesday afternoon, evening, and overnight. Just something I want to stay very aware of. Models let that fizzle out by the time we get into the start of Wednesday and into Wednesday evening here. This is what we've got kind of on plan. So excuse me if I misspoke earlier. We were looking at Tuesday night, not Wednesday night. Now from there, where's everything going? We'll take a look at this animation. This is how things shape up on the 11th. Our deepest low stretches a front right in through this area, and it's tucked away way up here, wrapping around parts almost north of the Hudson Bay. So open moisture transport here, okay? Higher pressure building in behind this by the 11th. And we're going to watch a couple of things going on in the tropics. Now we have two large tropical systems in the East Pacific. And at this point, neither of these is forecast to do that. We always watch out for that this time of year. So what are we going to be watching? Well, there's an open wave here that's going to be of critical importance for us to keep a very close eye on. And we need to see what happens with the redevelopment of high pressure just here in the Gulf of Alaska. All of those pieces are moving kind of together, and they're going to formulate what we've got for this near-term forecast. So let's just wrap all that up into one map here and look at the WPC total accumulated precipitation through the next 7 days. So this was this morning's 12Z run. Now what we've got is that deeper low that's curling way up here, okay? It's going to stretch a frontal boundary that throughout the week is going to just continue to progress farther and farther to the east and to the south. The southwestern monsoon is kind of curtailed. It's not advancing too far to the north at all throughout this week, which means the Pacific Northwest is going to be seeing a drier week, as is parts of the northern plains. Again, once these storms are out of here in the next 24 to 36 hours. When you get into the Tennessee Valley, though, pushing up against the Appalachian Mountains, that's when that front advances, increasing rainfall there. And the other thing we need to be talking about is what's going on right down here at the end of this week, which could be the next tropical system for us to be discussing. To look at that right now, this is just the latest infrared satellite imagery from early this morning through midday, and this is the system that we're talking about. At this point, when I was recording this, it had not yet been upgraded to a tropical depression, but we're going to watch for that later on this afternoon. Now, unlike what I had mentioned last week, where I thought the Bermuda High was going to curl this farther to the north and keep it away from the United States, better guidance this week suggests that whatever forms here could move over the Lesser Antilles, toward the Greater Antilles, maybe over the Bahamas, and eventually toward Florida. The National Hurricane Center, in fact, let me just update this to see if they change this at all. Okay, so I'm still using the 8 a.m. update. They'll probably give us one early in the afternoon. Has got this at a 70% chance of developing over the next 5 days, which means by the time we get to Friday, we'll be watching for whatever it is to be somewhere in this vicinity. The European Model Ensemble, so there's a 51-member ensemble here. Let's blow this up so we can see it. Suggests that, again, 120-hour forecast, so that would be by Friday, produces the system somewhere in this vicinity. Now, one of the weaknesses of the models, of all of the models, is that it's hard for them to predict the strength of an event like this before the system even takes shape and forms. So I can't really comment just yet on how strong this is going to be. But I've been paying close attention to the wind shear environment ahead of this. We know the ocean temperatures are warm enough to support development to a hurricane. And I'm just going to say, let's watch this very carefully all week. The model spread is not large. Okay, I know it looks quite large by the time we get out there to day 7, but it is not as large as it could be. And therefore, I expect this system to be moving toward Florida by the end of this week, and we're going to watch for it to make a turn into the southeast and possibly bring in some heavy rains up through the Carolinas. That's the latest guidance that I have right now. Whether or not it gets named and possibly goes up to hurricane status, unfortunately, is largely not yet known. Okay, we have a lot of spread in the forecast to really hone that in just yet. But I do notice this, through the next 10 days, this is the next 10 days, what's the probability of getting an inch of rain? So the color shading down here tells you that probability. Now what you notice is where that frontal boundary slowly moves through, Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley, good chances. Where we're going to be watching the storms come through, good chances. And that extends in Ontario into Quebec as well. And then here is where the tropical system will be coming in. And if it does make this turn, expect this area to see increased amounts of potentially heavy rainfall. In the southern plains, we're going to see a lot of scattered storms because as that front sags in through here, that will initiate storms in this area. But after we get past the event we're talking about here in the next 36 hours, much of the northern plains back toward Montana goes over to a drier pattern. When I'm defining dry here as a low probability of getting more than an inch of rain. All right. So let's go take a look at the European model. I'm going to focus primarily on the 0Z European run. And I'm not going to do a comparison between it and the GFS. The GFS has had a lot of variability, and I've noticed over the last few weeks that the Europeans done a better job at picking up on the pattern. So why don't we'll stick with a more simplified view here of just one model run. Now we've seen through this already. We're all the way out here now to Tuesday afternoon and evening, and now we're getting here into the overnight hours. I just want to make note, the European model is not high enough resolution as the NAM to pick up on that severe weather threat like I talked about into this area that we're going to be watching on the 10th, okay? But you can see that the model is attempting to blow up some storms in the overnight hours in this area, so let's keep an eye on that. Now beyond that, you see the deeper low curling here. And that frontal boundary, there's kind of two of them here, but that frontal boundary is going to sit in this area. And as we play it forward, you're just going to see, as I go out here toward Thursday, there it is, see it? And that will be the area on which we're going to watch those scattered storms as that flow kind of curls into that deeper low over the Hudson Bay. So this is now getting into Friday morning, afternoon, and getting through the evening hours. And then we're pressing here into Saturday. Now, high pressure builds into the midsection of the country, the front sags farther to the south, and the European model takes that tropical system by Saturday night over the southern part of Florida. Now remember, there's still large spread in this. We don't even yet have a cone of uncertainty produced by the National Hurricane Center. So we're being a bit speculative on where this is going to be, but this is what the latest guidance suggests. So then playing forward from there into Sunday morning, getting into the afternoon and evening, you can see the higher pressure building into this area. We can see the storms press farther to the south. And as we let this play on out to Monday into Tuesday, the frontal boundary interacts with the tropical system, and that's why I think that this area may be a lot wetter than currently forecast by that 10-day probability map I showed you a few moments ago. But notice, after the front moves through the Corn Belt, higher pressure builds in, and we go over to a bit of a drier pattern once we get past the middle of this week. From there, let's go look now. Let's shrink that up a little bit. Let's go look now at just the next 7 days of total accumulated precipitation, remembering that a lot of what you see right in through here is coming through now, this morning, and is again on the storms tonight. But then the frontal boundary moves farther into the Tennessee and Ohio Valley up toward the Appalachian Mountains, the scattered storms back here, the limited northward progression of the southwestern monsoon, and this was early this morning as the low moved here towards southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Here is where the current ECMWF places through the next 7 days that tropical system. We can look at this also by just comparing it to normal. So this would be the next 7 days of precipitation anomalies. Feel free to pause this and take a closer look at what we're expecting here. All right. From there, let's go out to day 10 and we'll do a multi-model comparison. Ridge and another ridge. So we basically have ridges flanking North America. But what I'm most concerned about is what's happening here. The Bering Sea, the North Pacific. This is where our most important signals are going to be coming from during the month of August. And right now the flow is pretty far to the north, and the European model suggests that it's going to do something like that. And this is the trough I'm most concerned about. Because if that trough does come through, that would indicate very stormy conditions for the northern plains of the United States. And let's go take a look at that. So this was the pattern at day 10. This is the week 2 precipitation pattern from the GFS. And there it is. Now again, it relies on the depth of that trough and the timing of that trough. Notice too, across the south, the GFS remains very dry. And it's got the remnants of that tropical system somewhere in here by the time we get out there into week 2. But I don't know that the week 2 GFS has got this pattern nailed down just right. So I want to do a comparison. We still see in the European a ridge here and the ridge there. But the flow is more subtle and flatter than in the GFS. In other words, this trough isn't as sharp. And as a consequence of that, we end up getting this week 2 precipitation pattern. Now you still see a lot of those mid-August storms that are coming up through the plains, possibly getting into the upper Midwest. Same thing for the Canadian Prairie. This is where the European model puts the heaviest rain from what was that tropical system that gets here by the next 7 days and then moves in here early next week. Now this is, again, all of that is still yet to be determined. We have to see if this tropical system survives the trip over the mountains here in Cuba, the island of Hispaniola, and where it goes. But this is at least our latest guidance. Just a lot of storms here. Now I'm going to put an idea in your mind here about what this pattern is going to look like. As we get into this time of year, a lot of times the way we get our thunderstorm activity comes off of recycled moisture. In other words, places that have recently had a lot of moisture put back into the soil from precipitation tend to use that and recycle it and put it back into the atmosphere to make more storms. So I know you see this area is showing up drier, but there's a lot of moisture in the soil in places in through here that could get recycled. I just want to keep an eye on, all right? And this area has been over forecast for rain for what feels like, 6 to 8 weeks. So that's my criticism of the models going out here all the way to the 23rd of August. From there, let's talk temperatures. Now, right now, excessive heat watches have been placed in the northwest for later this week. Ridge is building and it's going to get hot. This is all air quality issues. But today, there's about, I don't know, maybe a dozen states right here where some part of those states is seeing heat advisories. And we have a question as to when that hot air gets cleared out. So let's go answer it by looking at the National Digital Forecast Database high temperatures. It's a cool one today in parts of Montana where that trough is, but out ahead of it in the Central Plains, triple-digit heat. As we play this forward into Tuesday, it's another hot one through a big section here of the Corn Belt and much of the country. Only a few places where the storms are and where the trough came through do we see some cooler weather on Tuesday compared to average. By Wednesday, much of the lower 48 is near normal to above normal. But by the time we get into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that's when that low curls up on the Hudson Bay and the front tries to progress through. Just brings in some temporary cooler weather here, but the heat rebuilding in a big way in the Pacific Northwest and spreading across the northern plains. And we'll get the cool down over the southeast and we start to bring in that tropical system by the end of the weekend. Okay, so this is Sunday's high temperatures. From here, I'm going to go out and look at the pattern beyond that. So let's do this using this site today. This is the European Ensemble, day 5 through 10 temperature anomalies. So what we see immediately is the ridge rebuilding into the west and also the ridge over the Canadian Maritimes. But as we play this forward, we're just kind of moving forward a day at a time. We get all the way out here to day 10 through 15, or excuse me, a 6-hour time slot at a time. We get all the way out here to day 15, or day 10 through 15, excuse me. And it's a little bit warmer than what the GFS would suggest right here in this section of the country. So the European's got a warmer bias here than the GFS does. So this is what our pattern looks like by the time we get out there to the evening of the 23rd of August. So with the jet stream retreated to the north, that's what we see. Now, from this point forward, I want to talk to you about where we think this is going to be going beyond that. Because the GFS, as you get out there to that same time period, puts more of that heat farther to the east and it's got cooler weather here. So that's the differences. I've been trying to understand how this pattern's going to change, and the first thing you have to do is know what the pattern's been. So when we look here over the time period of the 9th of July through the 7th of August, this ridge has been dominant. So is this trough and this trough. Now upstream of that, we have this feature over parts of the Bering Sea. And then downstream, we've seen this trough feature. But all of these pieces right now are in flux, or they're moving. And I am most concerned about what's going to happen right here. Now, we have very weak signals about this. I'm going to be honest with you. Very, very weak signals. There's a lot changing here off of China, getting into Japan, that could disrupt this high, which changes the downstream flow for this trough ridge trough pattern. And why this is problematic for us is that we already know that August is a time of year where total jet stream level winds are very weak anyway in the northern hemisphere. It's past, we're right here at the heat, the peak of summer, and therefore these patterns are very elusive to understand and very weak at best. And so I look out there and I say, well, what does the model suggest is going to happen when we get out there to that last week of August? We'll call this week 3. And you notice there's a lot of warm shading here, which indicates higher than normal heights. That indicates a more northward jet stream. But then what I'm saying here is that the models, well, they've lost that. Do you remember we had this pattern here where we saw this trough ridge trough setting up through here, and now it's just all smoothed out in the forecast. Notice that? There's a bit of a dip over the west coast, and the flow just kind of comes gently over the United States. But there is nothing in this pattern that you could look at it and go, oh, this is the defining signal. This is what's going to change. This is where we're going to get our best clues about the week 3, week 4, even week 5 or week 6 pattern. It is not there. About the only thing that I consistently see the models doing, if I just go out to the same time period, is that they keep producing our largest area of higher pressure in the subtropics way out over the Atlantic. See that? So the flow keeps coming around. I don't see any blocking highs over the southeast, for example, that could really shut things off. So we start asking ourselves, what are some other drivers of this? And we're going to go to ocean temperatures. I think the biggest wild card is going to be right here. What does this do to both the West Pacific, which extends here, and the East Pacific, which extends here. What does it do to those two oscillations? That heat in this area and how it translates here into the jet stream position is going to be of greatest challenge to figure out. And I have spent the weekend trying to understand it, and the more I dig, I'll be honest, the more almost lost I can get in the pattern. I do know this: trade winds are strong, Southern Oscillation Index is positive, we've seen some cooler water emerge here, and there's still some cooler water in place there, and the Atlantic is plenty warm enough for tropical cyclone development. That's another wild card, because each tropical cyclone as it comes through has the potential to really disrupt the pattern as well. It's the transfer of energy and heat out of the tropics to the extratropics, the mid-latitudes. So we say, are there changes in the global angular momentum signature? Not really. I can't look at this and say that something dramatic is changing like it did in July. We've just been hovering around here, slightly above normal, primarily due to the flow near the equator. This is the thing I've told you I've been watching. Are we going to lose momentum farther to the north? But we don't have a clear signal about that just yet. And from there you say, well, what's going on with the MJO? Well, it came over here weekly into phase 1, and it's popping out here and going to phase 2 and phase 3. But as it does so, and it kind of curls around here, remember, in the month of August, with the developing La Nina, historical correlations with this are weak. And even in summer, teleconnections are weak. It's much easier to forecast with teleconnections in the cold season. So I'm not convinced that there's much of a conclusive story being told here in the models. So, or at least in the flow of the atmosphere. So why don't we, we'll at least consult the models. And we're going to do that first by looking here at what the CFSV2 suggests. So this is the week 3 forecast, the 23rd to the 29th, and we're looking here at precipitation anomalies. So the red colors would represent drier and the green would represent wetter. Interestingly enough, it's picked up a pocket of drier conditions in through here. And I'm looking at that going, why would that be drier? Because this is an area that lately has seen quite a bit of storms. I think they're going to recycle some of the moisture in this area. I buy this. Wetter to the south, stronger southwestern monsoon. But this is the thing I'm confused about. Because when we go out there to week 4, August 30th through September the 5th, well, now it brings in that. And the CFSV2 is really flip-flopped run to run. What about temperatures? Well, now the CFSV2, 23rd to the 20th, brings in a lot of heat north and really just keeps the pattern the way it has been. I mean, that is exactly the way summer shaped up, right? Greatest heat in the west, it's spread across the northern part of the United States, but we've seen cooler weather to the south. That's way back here. So I come back to it. I say, what about going out further? We see something similar, but it's really trying to bring in the heat into this area and bring in some relief to the northwest. Now, we've never been able to leave that pattern in place at all this summer. So if it does come through, it'll be transitory. So I then say, let's go ask what the European model is going to say. Let's go ask what the European model is going to say. And we'll do this again. So the end of the month, I've given you this blown out view because I'm looking for signals here. And they're not showing up as strong signals. So what's going on here, if we zoom in, is that week 3 time period, getting us out to the end of September, has very, very weak precipitation signals. The temperatures, warm. Now what about week 4? So let's slide this out and just get through the beginning of September. Continues to stay warm in the European. And then we see out here at that time period, let's go to anomalies, excuse me. Again, we don't see those strong precipitation signals. About the only thing I can rest my hat on here is that the Gulf is staying open. So you get scattered storms. That's what I'm expecting. Beyond that, now let's get to that map I showed you a few moments ago. We saw that with this 3-month sighting window, September, October, November, December, and then November, December, January. Wetter conditions evolving first in the northwest, possibly because of the developing La Nina, drier harvest in the midsection of the country. Is the new updates, which just came out from the NMME following this? Let's go ask. So here we are looking at the National Multi-Model Ensemble. We're going to look at U.S. precip rate, and let's go out here first to what they call Season 1. So this would be September, October, November. You do see that the model is suggesting drier risks. Remember, there's still moisture in place. in place here to be bringing in some storms, but drier risk. How long does that last? Well, let's go back again and go out to season 2, which is the next 3 months. On temperatures, it's certainly looking warm for October, November, December. But what's it doing for precipitation? Again, the model is suggesting drier conditions farther to the south, wet moving into the northwest early. So there's some consistency in our long-range models, and I just wanted to bring you up to speed on that. I appreciate your attention. Had a lot to cover today, but we'll talk to you again on Thursday. Thank you.